You're listening to the FairTax for All radio program, where we bring you everything and anything FairTax related. And now, your host, Alex Molesky.
I am the Taxman. Yeah. Welcome to the FairTax for All radio show, where our discussion is centered around income taxes, specifically the current U.S. income tax code. Our main goals are to educate and inform in order to eliminate the IRS and our horrendous tax code. Interested? Well, listen in for the next hour. I think you'll become a little bit enlightened, maybe aggravated, but informed, and hopefully feel better at the end of it when you understand that we do have a solution to this big mess. I am your host, Alex Molesky, and before I do get into the meat of the show, I usually like to give a very, well, hopefully very brief description of what the fair tax is about. The fair tax is a bill that eliminates the IRS and replaces the current tax code with a national sales tax of 23% on new goods and services, not used. It also eliminates the taxes of Medicare, Social Security, plus capital gains taxes of any kind. Not one government plan is eliminated by the fair tax. Not the aforementioned Social Security or Medicare. Nothing at all. That's not what we're here for. The fair tax is only a replacement system of tax revenue. We can fix all the other problems at different times. We just want to get a different methodology. In addition to replacing the income tax, the fair tax also provides each Social Security card holding household person a monthly prebate check to cover the 23% sales tax up to the poverty level. That's everybody. I said household. You don't have to live in a house to get the check. This is not welfare, folks. It is only to ensure we are not taxed on necessities. The fair tax is the only plan I know which does not raise taxes on any tax bracket. Any. That means young, middle-aged, middle-income, the rich, the poor, the retired. It also at the same time helps in a major league way to address the issues of our growing, unsustainable national debt. Think about Medicare, folks. It is a plan that indubitably shrinks the size of government and puts every American in a better financial position. Think about you, your kids, the future. We won't have a future unless we get some major league tax reform. And I feel that the fair tax is the best method, the best train to get this to fruition. Anyway, go to Fair Tax Calculator. I always mention that. That is a site with a calculator which has comparisons from the current income tax code to the fair tax. Put your own numbers in there. Put anybody's numbers in there for them tax returns and see what numbers come up, okay? Dustin Romney is going to be on our show today. He is the author of the great book, Rule of Law, and also Coalitions Director for Arizona Convention of States Project. He'll be on to update and clarify what is happening with the Convention of States projects. I even myself have gotten a little bit confused with some of the convolution that's going on out there. I'm also getting confused because Jeremy, who starts our show up in the morning 3 or 4 times, throws cookies in my face, even though we're Skyping the episode today. So I'm not in the studio with him, so I can't run around into the other booth and steal his oatmeal cookie. That looks good, man.
You're not going to like this. Somebody brought up a whole tray of them, so I would have had more than plenty for you.
You know, but I don't need it. My girth is big, and I don't play football anymore. In addition to having Dustin on, which is going to be great, I'm really looking forward to it. I also have more fair tax questions to get to at some point in the show. I didn't get to them last week. They keep adding up. And, you know, if I have time, maybe I'll add on an oddball tax story or so. They're slightly amusing. Sometimes I have some jokes which are weak, but there are some really good IRS stories which are amusing. So as I said, listen in. We'll get some great fair tax info. And after the show, I believe Dennis Prager, Best Stuff, is coming up after me, right? Again?
That is correct, our roomie.
I like being followed by a home run hitter, you know. That's good. That's good. He's protecting me in the lineup. He's protecting me. But before Dennis gets on and before Dustin joins me, I want to talk about some IRS budget news. This is, you know, hey, it's what we're about here. A little bit of a weekly recap. The AP News on Tuesday, word was that the House was has slashed the budget for the Internal Revenue Service's Tax Enforcement Division by $1.2 billion. That is a 25% cut that would mean fewer audits to taxpayers and make it more likely that people who cheat on their taxes will get away with it. The key point in all of this was that the House approved the cuts by voice after very, very little debate, folks. Usually there's some opposition. The cuts reflect basically GOP outrage over the agency's scrutiny of Tea Party groups seeking tax-exempt status and frustration over the agency's failure to produce thousands of emails by Lois Lerner. The use of a government agency to harass, target, intimidate, and threaten lawful, honest citizens was the worst form of authoritarianism, said Arizona Congressman Paul Gosar. Local boy. He was the author of an amendment to cut the IRS tax enforcement budget by $353 million. Representative Bill Huizenga of Michigan followed up with an amendment to cut $780 million more. So those two had this happen. You should be grounded when you abuse the people like the IRS does, right? If you're a good parent, there's repercussions if you are not acting nice, if you're not following the guidelines, A lot of us as parents, we hope we're teaching our children how to play nice, get out there in the world and make good decisions, not break the law. Well, abuse. And kudos to the congressman for major league grounding here of the IRS. Now, in opposition, the Democratic floor leader on the funding bill, Representative Jose Serrano of New York, he opposed the amendments, but as I said, he opted out against demanding a roll call vote. So you know what? He might be really pissed off too. He said, the answer is not to cut the IRS to bare bones, because our next problem is that the deficit will continue to grow because we won't be able to do the proper collecting of tax dollars in this country. The White House had already issued a veto threat on the legislation saying it shortchanges the IRS, impedes implementation of the new healthcare law, and undercuts the new regulations on Wall Street that passed in 2010. Adding to the woes of the IRS is on Thursday, Republicans again chastised the Justice Department for failing to share information with Congress about its investigation into the targeting of conservative groups by the Internal Revenue Service. Lawmakers called anew for a special prosecutor to look into this matter. Well, the criticism during a House subcommittee meeting came as Deputy Attorney General James Cole, the Justice Department's number 2 official, said the investigation has been brought in to include the disappearance of emails from the computer of Lois Lerner, who formerly headed the IRS division that deals with tax-exempt organizations. Representative Jim Jordan from Ohio, the chairman of the Subcommittee on Economic Growth, Job Creation, and Regulatory Affairs. That's a nice long title. Told Cole that he had serious concerns about the investigation and asked what it would take for an independent prosecutor to be appointed. He also demanded that prosecutors investigate why it took the IRS 2 months to publicly report the missing emails. 2 months. Jordan asked, are you going to look at the fact that the head of the agency that targeted conservative groups knew in April and didn't tell us until June? Folks, this is just another child doing the wrong thing. I feel that's what it is. I feel it's like it is. When my kids do something wrong, I've made it clear to them, very clear to them, you will get in 2, 3, 4 times as much trouble if I have to find out on my own if you've done something very bad, very wrong. And ever since they were little kids, they'd let us know so we could fix the problem, help them fix the problem, I should say, necessarily, versus us fixing the problem. So no, that's not how you have a relationship. All the best relationships have open lines of communication. Anyway, Cole said that the Justice Department did not learn about the email loss until after it was reported in the news media. He said he did not know the reason for the 2-month-long lag, but that he expected it to be looked into as part of the broader investigation. I understand they want to look into it more, but now that means more money out of our pockets, our taxpayer pockets. So this is just, I report on this basically every week, folks, and it just keeps getting me more and more irate. Anyway, the saga continues, folks. It's just amazing. It really is. Next week, this coming up week, the House will debate on the IRS and Treasury Department funding bill, and that will resume on Tuesday. My listeners already know that we have the solution to the IRS abuse, and that is the fair tax, right? Am I right? Jeremy, am I right?
You are right.
Oh, God, I needed that. No. My wife is good to me. She doesn't say I'm wrong all the time. Now, I do have some question and answers today I do want to get to. What else do I want to do? I've got this, I've got that. You know what I want to talk about for a minute before we do go to break? Speaking of the IRS and their abuses, I had the chance to speak last night at the Tea Party of Scottsdale, and I want to thank all the people that came out on that was Thursday night, and it was a 30-minute film on Repeal 16, the House Bill 104, to repeal the 16th Amendment. The Tea Party of Scottsdale hosted the event. It's such a well-produced film that I'm presenting. And all I do is, I want other people. If you have a group out there, I want you to contact me at alex@mollusky.com, or just go to the mollusky.com website. I can bring a setup. I can, I have the projector. I have everything. I can play the film for you. But basically, I'll just introduce it for 2 minutes in front of it. Play the film, and then it seems everybody has lots of questions about it, but it is just another great tool for us to get some comprehensive tax reform in this country. And the bill's a wide open one, basically. It's not a fair tax presentation, folks. So you could be a flat taxer and you would love this. You could be a VAT person and love this. You could be a no taxer and love this. We need it. And I want to thank all the people that came. There were some phenomenal questions. Value-added taxes, I think I brought up, but people were talking about the Convention of States is moving this through. Absolutely. Why not? And that kind of excites me because my next guest coming up after this break is Dustin Romney, author of the great new book, Rules of Law, and Coalition's director for Arizona Convention of States. He will be on in about, 3-4 minutes after these news breaks and messages from our sponsors. So anyway, people, stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Fair Tax for All Radio. Welcome back to the Fair Tax for All radio show, where we talk about everything fair tax. I'm your host, Alex Mollusky, and thank you so much for listening in with us this evening. My guest today, I'm excited about this, is Dustin Romney. He is the author of the great book, Rule of Law, and he's also the Coalition's director for Arizona Convention of States Project. He's going to be on here to talk a little bit about his book and also to update and clarify what is happening with the Convention of States projects. Now, along with the fair tax, my regular listeners know that I very often chat about other vehicles to attain my ideal goal, the fair tax bill, H.R. 25. And the fair tax bill is just one vehicle to get us a new tax code. I have talked with Jim Bridenstine, Congressman from Oklahoma. He is the sponsor of the Repeal 16 bill. I've talked to him about the bill numerous times. I've spoken with him on the show before. And that's the bill where the 16th Amendment would be repealed, and then Congress would get together and produce a new tax code to implement a new tax code. The idea behind the bill is that it's open to discussion from all sides, and that includes a fair tax as an option in the discussion, along with multiple other tax plans. I actually was discussing this bill at the Scottsdale Tea Party last night, or was that last night? No, that was yesterday, 2 days ago, Thursday night. And it was a good talk. And the Convention of States project was brought up as one of the methods to get tax reform. People kept asking about that, and I said, absolutely, you can go through Congress to get tax reform. But one of my other favorite vehicles, and I speak about this all the time, and I've had a lot of the great Convention of States leaders on the show, is the Convention of State project. And I've asked Dustin here on the show, because even though I've discussed the Convention of States on the show, it bears giving you, me, and everybody else a refresher of what it is all about and what is going on around the state and the country. And last Thursday, when I was talking about this and having these questions, I said, you know what? I'm actually a little behind on the news because I was going to wait until Saturday night to ask, Dustin all these questions. So Dustin, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you have a new baby in your life and you might be a sleep-deprived man, but I want to thank you for taking the time to come on here on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh, thanks. Now, before we get to the meat of my convention of states questions, I want to tell us a little bit about your book. The first thing I noticed about it is that you wrote the book before most of the convention of states movement was really moving, was really getting started, at least, in this generation. Please tell us a little bit about your book and also what drove you to write it.
Yeah, I started writing Rule of Law in November of 2012. And actually, when you hear that, it seems like maybe I started writing it because of the election results in 2012, but it really didn't have much to do with that in hindsight. It's a book that I wanted to write for a long time. I had really been doing a lot of studying about constitutional issues over several years before that time, and I knew there was a point where I wanted to kind of put all that knowledge down to paper and see where I could go with it. And the idea just sort of developed through that over time, and put my ideas down and went through some of the constitutional scholarly work and the history that I found, and put forward the solutions that I think are best for the country. If you look at the subtitle of the book, which I don't think you mentioned, it is Why and How We Must Amend the Constitution. And that really is a good description of how the book is divided up. If you kind of divide it into two parts, the first part goes through the why. And I really go all the way back to the founding to describe the deep-seated constitutional issues. And I focus in on the General Welfare Clause, which is found in Section 8 of Article 1. And that is a clause that has been so badly misinterpreted by a lot of people going all the way back to the founding and some of the original constitutional debates that we had. But for the most part, we stuck to the true meaning all throughout the 19th century, and it wasn't until the 1930s and the New Deal when the court totally departed from that understanding in a ruling called Helring v. Davis, which was a ruling that decided the constitutionality of the Social Security Act. And once we had that ruling, which basically the court said Congress can do whatever they want in the name of the general welfare. And that's really what opened the floodgates of the government that we have today. And also I talk about other issues such as it's not just court rulings that led to an out-of-control government, but actual constitutional amendments. You've been talking today about the 16th Amendment. And that's certainly something that was a departure from the original understanding of the taxing power that Congress had. And really the only way to fix that is by constitutional amendment. And so once you come to that conclusion, then we've got to start putting down the best ideas, FairTax being one of them. I put forward an idea myself for just a cap on the amount of money that can be taxed from the citizenry. And that's one of four amendments that I propose, and that's really the meat of the book. Is the second half is talking about these four amendments that I propose.
Okay. Now this book, we can order this online at Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble, or
absolutely
through your website, FoundersLiberty.com.
My website, Founders Liberty. It'll take you to Amazon.com. It's available there. If you search Rule of Law or search my name, it'll pop right up.
Okay. It's a solid book, folks, and there's some great ideas on it. Now, I did want you to be able to plug your book there a little bit. FoundersLiberty.com, folks. Not Founders Hub, but FoundersLiberty.com. I'm excited about that we have somebody that's so well versed in the Constitution, because I'll tell you what, I'm more of a wallflower when it comes to being a constitutional expert. I'm definitely not. I know about the fair tax, and I just regurgitate what I learn about the Convention of States, and it gets a little convoluted. So that's one of the exciting reasons I'm having. We have a constitutional expert and the head of the Arizona Convention of States on here. So you're going to be able to help clarify some things that myself, who's probably a little more informed than the average person, is getting stuck on. I've told people the quick refresher, and we're probably going to have to go to break in a couple minutes, but I know you're going to be able to answer these questions to debunk my confusion and also to let us know what's going on in the state and in the country with the Convention of States. But just a quick refresher for the folks, if the United States government is not doing what we want, we can call for a Convention of States. That's where the states make proposals and pass it in their state governments. And the government calls, and it goes to a convention. 2/3 of the states have to pass identical plans before a law can be voted on. And 3/4 of all states have to agree to an identical plan, or it cannot become a law. There is no threat of a runaway convention, and I know you spoke about that, as, in your book. I know you must go into that with the random laws thrown out on because 3/4 of the states will have to want it. There can't be a runaway, folks. You're not going to tell me that California and Texas, they're not going to agree on it unless it benefits all their people. So 3/4 of states makes a runaway impossible for a bad law, folks. It really does. The power of Congress and the Senate with their old boy clubs and tax lobby money makes looking out for the people something that seems like it's in the past. I love the Convention of States projects. It's really where I feel that we might need to go in order to keep the powers of DHC in check. And it's not where we might need to go. It's where we need to go. We need to put them in check. We're going to go to break for just a minute. Dustin, I'm hoping you'll stay with me because I need to ask you to clarify some of the Convention of States confusion that I've run into. And also, please update us what's going on in Arizona, in the country, and let us know how me, and my listeners can help, okay?
All right. Love to be here.
All right. We'll be right back, folks, after this break. Welcome back to the FairTax for All radio show. I'm your host, Alex Molesky. With me, I have Dustin Romney. He is the Arizona director for the Convention of States project. Hold on a second. Coalitions director. Pardon me. Yeah. Dustin, thanks for staying with us after the break. Dustin's the author of a great book. Dustin, I did not write down the subtitle of the book, but it's a book called The Rules of Law. And what's the full title?
Rule of Law, Why and How We Must Amend the Constitution.
And it's a great read, and you can find it at his website, foundersliberty.com. And you go there, and it'll take you directly to Amazon or wherever you need to go. You can probably buy the download or hard copy, soft copy, all that. But bottom line is go there. Just go to foundersliberty.com. It is a great read. He's a constitutional expert and also the Arizona Convention of States head. So what I want to know, and I'm hoping you can clarify this for me a bit, the biting question on my mind is something I need clarity on. I'm the dummies for the Convention of States questioner right here. Sure. I keep hearing that I know there's no such thing as a runaway convention, but I keep hearing different Convention of States projects around the country potentially pushing different plans. And I believe I have this right. But since you're on now with me, and you're the go-to man here in Arizona, I want you to clarify this for me. I believe, correct me, that there can be any number of groups out there pushing their Convention of States agenda. And that can be expected, but the only thing that really, really matters at the end of the day is if that 3/4 of the states pass identical proposals in order for these plans to become the law of the land. Do I have that correct?
You do have that correct. There is some controversy about whether or not the proposals have to be identical, but the prevailing view from most scholars is that the proposals do have to be identical. There's really no language in Article 5 that talks about the proposals and whether or not they have to be identical, but most scholars tend to agree that that's the safest way to go. And there are multiple groups out there that are pushing a convention. I'm not familiar with most of them. Obviously, I'm familiar with Convention of States. I'm familiar with a more left-wing group called Move to Amend, which they're trying to overturn Citizens United. And then I'm familiar with the Compact for a Balanced Budget Amendment, which is being headed up by Nick Dranius at the Goldwater Institute. And their angle really is to sort of get around the convention and sort of sneak an amendment in just by having a sort of a procedural convention and getting a balanced budget amendment passed that way. But the Convention of States, in my mind, is the best one out there. And the reason I say that is because it's the broadest. We simply advocate for a convention for the purpose of limiting the power and scope of the federal government. And that could include any number of issues. And the advantage of that is we can solve any number of issues. And we all know there's a ton of issues that need to be solved, whether it's spending, whether it's entitlements, whether it's taxes, whether it's regulatory issues, federalism issues. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed with our federal government. And to us, the best proposal is going to have a broad convention where the best minds, honest hearts can come together and vet the best ideas.
Okay. Hey, I like it. Helps clarify it for me. I was just concerned that it could get a little bit convoluted, but no, I mean, it's just the same process that, we can all bring different ideas to the table, but it gets filtered on and then voted on. So it's as simple as that. It's not a runaway train, folks. I did have plenty of people asking me this question. I just wanted to make sure I was not spreading misinformation. So thanks for the clarity on that.
Let me just speak to the runaway convention, if I could.
Sure.
It really is, like you say, almost an impossibility that there could be a runaway convention. To give you an analogy or an example, if you're a business owner and you're sitting in a board meeting with your top staff and you have a problem that you identify in your business, and you turn to Bob and Bill and you say, Bob and Bill, why don't you guys work on this problem and give us your proposals? You're not going to worry about Bob and Bill coming up with a bunch of runaway proposals. You don't have to accept whatever proposals they come up with. If they come back to you with some crazy ideas, then you say, okay, thanks, but no thanks. It's that simple. And when you have 38 states that have to ratify, excuse me, you can certainly conceive that California or New York or Massachusetts might send some delegates that may not have ideas that may be best. But then you have Wyoming, Montana, Arizona, Texas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Arkansas, Florida, and all of those delegates are likely going to oppose anything that is radical.
Okay, that makes sense to me. One thing I do want to ask you also is, last time I checked, we had 3 states that had passed the convention. Are we still there at 3 states at this moment?
That's correct. Florida,
Okay.
Georgia, and Alaska are the 3 that have passed the Convention of States.
Nice. I want to continue talking about this and finish this up in our next segment, but at this moment, we do have to go to a break. Dustin, you'll stay with me, I hope, and I do appreciate you being on here and getting us up to date with the Convention of States Project. Folks, we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to the Fair Tax for All radio show, where we talk about everything fair tax related. I'm your host, Alex Molesky. On with me today, I have Dustin Romney, Arizona Convention of States Director, Coalitions Director. Dustin, thank you once again for staying with us. And we were talking about the Convention of States projects. For those of you just joining us, that's basically when the government, our federal government, isn't doing our job. Our founding fathers created a backdoor fix, kind of like a computer programmer might allow him to get back into a program if it's been hacked or messed up with application. But bottom line is, I guess I could put it, and I don't know if I probably grabbed this from your website, Dustin, but I love this one. But this is a George Washington quote: "If in the opinion of the people, the distribution or modification of the constitutional powers be in any particular wrong, let it be corrected by amendment." Well, the Convention of States allows us to do that, folks. If we can get 3/4 of the states to agree on basically identical, reform or plans, it can become law. And we know that we had 3 states pass it in the last time around, the convention, Georgia, Florida, and Alaska, as Dustin reminded me. And I know in Arizona we got past the House, and we failed to get it voted on in the Senate. Senate President Biggs seemed to block our efforts in a major league way to even get the bill for a Convention of States brought to a vote. I really want to know why this is. We've speculated on why it is without getting nasty, because overall I hear he's a pretty darn good guy. But what I'm more concerned about is how we can avoid it in the next go around. And Dustin reminded me it's going to be in January when our next legislative session begins. And how can we avoid this?
Well, it's not going to be easy. Senator Biggs is certainly going to be reelected, and he is likely to be reelected into the position of Senate President where he was last year, and that's a powerful position to be in because you decide what comes up for a vote and what doesn't. But there are ways that we can get it through. We hope to be able to persuade him. We hope to be able to change his mind. We think that we have the facts, and we think that we have the right ideas on our side. and that's ultimately what matters. But, we have a great legislative liaison in Linda Brickman. She does a tremendous job working with the legislature, and we're pretty confident in her abilities to get the votes that we need in the Senate, and we think we can get it to pass. As far as why Senator Biggs is opposed to this, it's tough for me to wrap my head around. I do understand why they have the concerns that they have. It should give us pause, and we should certainly tread lightly and tread with caution anytime we're going to go in and mess with the Constitution. There's no doubt about that. But the safeguards are there. Article 5 is spelled out pretty clear, and the likelihood that there would be a runaway or a bunch of liberals overtaking the convention that would somehow rewrite the Second Amendment or overturn some, the civil liberties, it's just extremely unlikely. And I can't understand why they're so bitterly opposed to it, but he's been involved and his family has been involved with an organization called the John Birch Society, which many of you may be familiar with. But they are opposed to this, and they have a great organization in place in Arizona, and that's been our opposition. It's really surprising to me. When I wrote my book, I wasn't expecting much opposition at all from the right. You expected there to be opposition from the left as far as calling a convention goes for the purpose of limiting the federal government. But it's been very surprising to me that we've had so much opposition from the right. It's simply an unrealistic proposal to think that we can get enough constitutionalists in Congress to decide to give up their own power. The likelihood of that is just almost zero. And so calling a convention is the way we have to go, and we're going to have to fight like heck, and that's why I'm on this radio show trying to get people informed and rallied so that we can put the pressure on the Senate to get this thing passed.
Well, I appreciate you coming on here and updating us and keeping us informed. And I'm going to be reaching out to you again. I hope you'll come back on or send some other folks on. Linda, I gave some kudos to the other month because I haven't had her on as a guest, but she's one of the tireless workers with the Convention of States Project. She's been outstanding. That's Linda Brickman. But is there any other news you'd like to share with us before you go today that needs to get out to my listeners of maybe where we can go? I know I'm already involved, and I go to the Facebook page and I try to update people on events when there's any kind of thing, when stuff's going on. I know it's coming up to January is when the session's open again. But before then, there's a lot of work that can get done, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming, a lot of outreach. Where can people go to sign on, to get involved? Because this is, oh, man, folks, how great would you feel if you were part of a movement where you actually had a voice, where you actually could get some comprehensive reform in taxation or limiting the size of government, where it couldn't be a runaway, where you basically become the savior of your children, your grandchildren of this country, so you could get things basically back online. I feel like we're a train that is kind of somewhat rolling off the tracks that our founding fathers set up for us, and what a way to get back on track. Is there where can they go, Dustin? Where can we visit?
Thanks for mentioning that. It's so true. There's so many people that feel so powerless and feel so frustrated, but this is one area, it is one issue where it is broad enough, it is big enough, it is deep enough to actually solve the problems that we have, and it is something that people can be a part of. Go to conventionofstates.com. and you can learn how you can put pressure. Basically, what we're looking for is to put pressure on legislators. That's the main thing we need, is to get the proposal passed, the resolution passed through the legislature. And to do that, we need a grassroots movement that sends letters, that makes phone calls, that sends faxes, that sends emails, that lets these legislators know that this is an issue that people care about. And state legislatures have a tendency to respond to those things much more so than Congress. So go to conventionofstates.com. You can sign up. You can get notifications for when there's an important vote coming up, when there's a committee vote coming up, and you'll be notified of when to put the pressure on. We also have a petition that's going around now. You can sign that petition. If you go to Convention of States, their Facebook page, you should be able to find it, and sign that petition. And that will send an automatic message to your legislator saying that you support the movement.
Super. Dustin, thank you so much again for joining us. And folks, I have the link to Convention Estates up at my website. I'm going to have links to Dustin's page and his book. Dustin, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, folks, as Dwight Eisenhower said, through their state legislatures, the people can demand and participate in constitutional conventions in which they can adopt such amendments as can and will reverse any trends they see as fatal to true representative government. That was Dwight Eisenhower, folks. Another president. It's nice when they know that we can protect ourselves. Anyway, let's see how much time I have in this fun show today. You know what? I usually don't respond to rude posts. So here's a letter to you folks, my listeners. I'm honored that you take the time to listen to my show. I really am. And whether you support the fair tax or not, I'm thankful that you are listening in and giving me the chance to discuss the fair tax. And I've made requests that you pose questions or comments in regards to the fair tax via email or Facebook. Maybe it's been a while since I said it, so I'm saying it right now, but I request that you keep it in a civil tone. I mistakenly, I guess, assumed that most people would get it and keep the tone of discussion respectful when posting a question. Those of you that do know me know that I despise bullies and internet thugs. So to them, it should be of no surprise that when I had a rude poster to the show Facebook page this week, I banned the poster. The site is for civil discourse, folks. I won't go into the details. Decide to say that I kept it civil and gave the person many chances to edit or delete their own post. Bottom line is they failed, so I clicked edit and ban. Boop, 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 boop. You're gone. Basically, folks, we have no room for hate here. Play nice or you're not allowed in my playground. It's simple. I won't tolerate bullies on the playground. All right. I vented. As much as I'd like to ignore the poster's comments, I will clean up the language and put it into cohesive sentences because they were just ranting part of the time because there were a couple concerns there that definitely deserve some reply. And bottom line is the poster said the fair tax is nothing like they claim. Specifically, it's not a retail sales tax to replace all their federal taxes. This is probably the only, well, aside from the rude comments, the only really silly comment they made. Of course, it's a sales tax. The poster did go on to claim that his reasoning was that the fair tax was not a real sales tax, is he claimed that it gets 60% of its revenue from taxing medical procedures and taxing the government. His reasoning is, for example, that the sales tax on a $100,000 procedure would be $30,000 in taxes. Okay, I see where you're going there. I've explained the fair tax before, though. The cost of embedded taxes and tax compliance almost equals that 23% sales tax. I've talked about it almost weekly on the show. FICA taxes of Medicare and Social Security that we, the employees, pay and that our employers pay are over 13% of our taxes, folks. Combined with compliance adds up to about 22% of the embedded tax in all of our goods and services. So what if that $100,000 procedure cost $101,000? Okay. You have to look into the math, folks. Let me go a step further and add that if the person is insured, then there's no reason that insurance coverage plans can't cover taxes too. That can be implemented into the fair tax. Want to protect the people. Now, the second part of the poster's argument is that the government is taxed, including state and local entities. My really short answer is so. My mature answer is why not? The government will get the tax money back anyway, so the reason we tax everybody and every entity equally is so they don't skirt the system. Government has abused the system with loopholes and monopolies of government businesses which are not legal. I talked about it the other week with the Tennessee Valley Authority. It was broken up decades ago because they were a government-run business with unfair advantages over the private sector. The government is not in business to do anything but protect us, folks. The poster also wrote that the government would be getting taxed above the retail sales tax, paid separately from the retail sales tax, on top of the retail sales tax. If you're confused by that, so was I. If the poster can let me know, it's one rate. I'll clarify it. It's one rate. It's a 23% sales tax. Simple. If anything, the government gets its tax dollars back on the national level. Think about it. I'm thinking that the poster was trying to say that on a state and local level, they are getting taxed more. They are not. On the federal level, if we were going to pay taxes, say from the state of Arizona, where I'm taping the show, it comes back probably a lot of that tax dollar when the federal government disperses it back out to the states. But on a state level, it says they're getting taxed more. They're not. The state and local levels, part of the levy, whatever taxes they want on local and state government. Also, and this is a big point, right now the federal government returns the state dollars, government's a portion of the federally collected money. So you really think this would stop under the fair tax? No. I believe I've answered most of the questions from this poster. I could figure, at least most of what I could figure out, at least the ones that weren't insulting my intelligence or ethics. I also want to remind you that the sponsors of the fair tax bill, dear poster, as I've mentioned many times before, is that they are open to discussion. They're open to discussion of the contents of the fair tax bill. The bill has changed over the years. It's been tweaked. I should say the bill is open to logical discussion. I'll add one more part of the poster's message. The poster asked for one page of proof of the $22 million of economic research that went into the fair tax. They offered a $50,000 for proof, so I sent them a link. It's really simple, folks. Go to fairtax.org and type in the word research. Fairtax.org and type in research. That's it. The research papers, or many of them, come right up. They're not hidden. I'm thrilled that I was able to make an easy $50,000 there. I won't hold my breath, but if you like, just make the certified cashier's check out to me, Alex Molosky, and send it to the station. I'm not going to hold my breath. Anyway, folks, please, a reminder, keep it civil when writing to me. I don't have time for rude people, and you shouldn't either. I want you to send me questions still. I'll take them. And you know what? He was very rude to me, and I thought I kept it fairly civil. So send it to me. I'll only insult you back a little bit on the show if you're rude. Thanks for listening. Next up, Dennis Prager, and I'll be back next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.